In this video, you're going to learn how to take standard piano chords and apply a few simple techniques to make your playing sound interesting and more advanced. These are tools anyone can use, whether you're a beginner or you've been playing keys for some time. We're going to start with the progression 1, 5, 6 minor, 4. And I'm going to play all of these chords in root position in the key of E. So that's going to start with an E major chord, then a B major, a C sharp minor, and an A major. Now, root position means that the name of the chord is going to be the lowest note that you play. So for E major, E, G sharp, B. Then for B major, right, B is the lowest, and then same with the other chords as well. So the first thing that I would do to change up this progression is to consider what inversions I have at my fingertips. Inversions are the same notes in the chord being played in a different order. So let's take our one chord, E major. If I wanted to play this chord in first inversion, I would simply take the lowest note and take it up an octave. So my inversion would be G sharp, B, and E. This is also commonly written as 1/3 or E over G sharp. If I wanted to play this chord in second inversion, I would just do the same process again. Take that second note of the chord and take it up an octave. So B, E, G sharp. So I like to take this concept and apply it to the chords that I play in my right hand. Usually I like to keep my left hand playing things in root position unless an inversion is noted in the music. So I'm going to take my chords and consider where each of them lie on the piano and play the inversions that bring the chords closest to where my first chord is. So for E major, I'll play it in root position. The next chord is 5 or a B major. I'm going to play this in first inversion, which means that I only have to move these two notes down to the black keys, and I can keep my pinky on the B. You see how that's a lot less movement than going all the way down to B major in root position. And this minimizes the room for error when you're playing things in a quick progression. My next chord is the 6 minor. So from this B major chord, I don't have any notes in common with this chord because it's C sharp, E, and G sharp. So I'm just going to try and move my hand the least. I can move my fingers up and play C sharp minor in first inversion. Or I can choose to move my whole hand down and play C sharp minor in root position. But I'm probably going to play it in first inversion, I think. And then the next chord is the 4 or the A major. So from here, I have two notes in common with the A major chord, and that's going to be the E and the A sharp. So all I have to do is move my middle finger from this G sharp up to an A. So to play the progression in the right hand looks like this. Then I'm going to add in my left hand on root position. Another thing to note is that when you're playing the left hand, you don't want to play every note in the chord. So I like to either play the first and the fifth of each chord or play it in octaves. And you can do that with just one note on the pinky and the thumb, or you can play the fifth as well. So here's that same chord progression in the key of G. We'll start with root position chords and then add in our inversions. The next thing I like to add to chord progressions is the use of suspensions. A suspension is a way to create tension by adding a note to a chord that it doesn't belong to. Commonly, this is used by taking the third scale degree and replacing it with the fourth or the second. So in the key of E, if I were to play my one chord, I'm going to take out that G sharp and play an A to do a fourth suspended. Or I can change that G sharp to an F sharp. And that would be called a second suspended. So here's that same chord progression with a couple suspensions added in. Another example of suspensions are seventh chords, and I love adding sevenths into the chords that I play. One thing I like to do is add a seventh to minor chords because it helps to glue those chords back into the rest of the major progression. So this is how I would do that in this key. So you see, by keeping the B as the highest note that I'm playing, I have that seventh suspension on the minor 6. And then on the 4, that would be considered a 2 suspended. So here's that one more time. So here's that same progression with some suspensions in the key of G. Another thing I like to add to my progressions are passing notes. If the song you're playing has a specific melody line, you can choose to play that in the right hand. Sometimes that creates just enough motion to add interest to the chords you're playing in your left hand. If the song you're playing doesn't have a specific part, I like to add short riffs that lead into the next chord that's coming. So you can tell with this technique, I'm not necessarily playing chords in the right hand, although I am still thinking about the chords that I'm playing as I go through them in my left hand, because I want the way that I add the melodies in my right hand to follow where the chords are going. So here's that same progression with that technique played in the key of G. So now let's apply these techniques to a different chord progression. This chord progression is going to be 1, then a minor 2, then a minor 6, and 4. So I just played those all in root position to show you what that looks like. Now I'm going to add inversions. This is what it would sound like with suspensions added. And then here's what it sounds like adding passing notes into the progression as well. And then here's this whole progression in the key of G. If you like this video, then be sure to check out this next video about playing keys for worship.